In the previous module, I briefly touched on the different kinds of things we think about when we think of story. We can think of books, movies, songs and poems, but the reality is that story is so much more than that. Now, I don't want to dwell too much here on what story is, but it might be that I can change the way you think about it and why it's so important. Now, would you believe me if I told you that our understanding of our entire world, our universe, and even how we've developed as a species was only possible through the fact that we are natural-born storytellers? Laws, religion, science, politics, culture, how we buy and how we're sold to, how we come to develop beliefs and opinions, everything is built upon a foundation of storytelling that creates meaning and symbolism, which is ultimately how we create and share our view of the world, and therefore how we bring about order, and sometimes it's cheeky twin disorder. Now, I could spend hours talking about this and geeking out and getting distracted, but if you want to understand more about how story is so embedded in our history, then I'd really encourage you to read even just the first chapter of Yuval Noah Harari's book Sapiens, on how human beings evolved to develop complex cultures and societies, and it all began with story. The next thing I want you to do is not just think of story as always being fiction. I think that story is often a word used in the context of lies or creative license, things that aren't true. Naturally, so many of the stories that exist in the world in whatever format are fictions, from published stories such as movies and books to the gossip people can spread verbally, or even the stories we tell to ourselves, either objectively or through fantasies or dreams as we make sense of ourselves and the world around us. But story isn't a fiction or a lie by default, and many a philosopher or deep thinker might argue that through the very act of even telling a true story, we're immediately engaged in the process of selective reimagining to guide and influence people to believe something that isn't the objective truth. So taking all the philosophical yeah buts out of the way, this is what I think story is. Story has emerged from our basic human need as complex social animals to be understood, to influence, to learn, to inspire, to achieve and strive for. Story was the fuel that took us into the caves and back out again to paint, to carve, to develop spiritual and religious beliefs and share them, to enable us to group together in small and then more complex communities and societies. Because it was through story that we worked out and found agreement, although not always, of how the world is and how things should be. But through story, we've also crafted intricate worlds of pure imagination, seen life through the eyes of others, climbed that mountain, fought that demon, understood the reason why, flown that spaceship and travelled through time, walked in the shoes of others and soaked up their innermost thoughts. So I don't think that story is a concept or a thing. I think story is a verb, an energy that is innately human. And I believe that you, me, and every single human being on this planet are pure story. And so we should take the opportunity to craft our own stories and share them amongst our very own tribe.